I'm going to show you exactly how to build these drawer faces, install them, and put the hardware on in this video. I'm also going to be using a different technique from what I've used in other videos. Hey everyone, welcome back to Papa's Workshop. Today's video is all about putting the drawer faces onto this cabinet that I've been building. Now I'm going to use a different method than what I have used in the past. Each time I try to build a cabinet, I want to be able to show you different methods so that you can choose which method works for you. Now in this case, when I build the drawer faces, again, I'm going to use a little bit different technique than what I've used in the past. Once the drawer faces are done and it's time to install them, don't skip that part because I want to show you a very simple, easy to do method to be able to ensure perfect alignment. The first step in this process is that I took the premium pine board that I'm using to build these frames and I'm cutting them to length, and then I'm bringing them over to the table saw and I'm cutting these 2 inches wide. Now I'm not using a push stick here because it's really impossible to be able to do that. The blade is completely covered so my fingers are completely safe. I have the stop block set up on the miter saw station to be able to have the correct length for the vertical portions of these drawer faces. And that way I can make the repeated cuts and be able to keep it safe. Now one of the things that I always do is make sure that your thumb is out of the way when using a miter saw. And you can see I keep my thumb actually tucked underneath and away from that blade. Too often I see people that do not do this. So always try to keep your hands as far away from that blade as you possibly can. With these boards cut to length, I'll bring it back over to the table saw, and again I'll cut these 2 inches wide. And this is the shape that I'm going to go for. I want to be able to make this rabbit cut to be able to hold a 1/2 inch piece of plywood. And to be able to do that, I'm going to set the table saw up and make this cut using a table saw instead of a router. I have the saw blade set at a 1/2 inch high, and I have this cut over at about 1 inch. And that way I can make that first cut and I can repeat the process on all of this material. That way it keeps it very consistent. With the first cut completed, now I have to reset up the table saw. I have the fence moved over to a 1/4 inch. I raised up the blade to be able to match the cut that I had just done, and I'll run all of these boards right back through the table saw again. Making this second cut actually completes this rabbit cut and creates the profile that I'm looking for these drawer faces. This completes the actual profile that I need, and that 1/2 inch plywood will be able to drop into that perfectly and it'll be flat on the back side. Next thing, I want to use a 45-degree angle on these. Now there's a number of ways to be able to do these joints, but in this case I decided to set this up and do 45-degree joints. To make the first cut, I decided to use this setup with the miter gauge on the table saw. And this is very effective. I'm not trying to cut these boards to length. I just want to be able to cut the 45 on this one end on all of the pieces. And then I'll flip it over and I'm going to show you a different setup to cut the other end of this board for this 45-degree angle. This is a picture frame jig that I had made several years ago, and this will be a perfect application to be able to cut the second 45-degree angle. Now this jig is actually very accurate to be able to cut precise 45 degrees, so this should work just fine to be able to cut the final length of all of these different pieces. Again, there are several different methods to be able to put this frame together, but in this case I decided to use this picture frame clamping system, and I'm going to use just a couple drops of the CA glue along with the white glue. That way I'll get instant adhesion, and I'm also going to nail this together, and that way I'm not going to be slowed down. I'm going to be able to move right along with this process. I'm using the Starbond medium glue to be able to attach these pieces together, and that way you'll get an instant bond to be able to hold it in place. I'm also going to be using the Tight Bond white glue to be able to make the long-lasting joint. So what you do is just simply put this into the clamp. Make sure that you align it and have a good fit. Once that's done and it's all clamped down, then one nail in each side, and that's taken care of. The Starbond glue holds it in place while the white glue dries, and the nails just provide a little bit extra insurance to make sure that this is a good, tight, solid joint that will last for years to come. And this way I can continue to move around and do all 4 joints and complete this frame. The frames are completely done now, and yes, the glue is still wet, but that's okay. I can still move on to the next step. I took the necessary measurements to fit the plywood, and then I'm going to dry fit, make sure that it fits into this opening perfectly. And once I know and verify that it fits, now I can add the glue, and I can actually glue in these 1/2-inch piece of plywood inserts into this drawer, and that will actually complete the drawer face itself. Now I'm going to use plenty of glue here. I'm not going to be using any nails for this process at all. But I am going to use plenty of weights to be able to hold that plywood down into this frame until the glue dries. And then the next morning it's time to come back and sand everything. I'm starting out with 80 grit paper on this sander, and that's going to be able to sand everything down really nice and smooth. And yes, I'm using the dust collection to be able to make this almost a dustless situation. Then I'm going to switch over to 220 grit paper, and I'm going to sand the plywood insert because it's a little bit rough, and I'm going to finish off sanding the outer frame as well to make sure that everything is completely smooth. And then I'll be ready for paint. On the back side, I still had one of the pricing labels on. The easiest way to be able to remove that is with the heat gun. All it does is take a few seconds to be able to heat up this label, and then you can start peeling it off. This by far is the easiest method that I have ever come up with to be able to remove these price labels. All you're really doing is just heating up that glue and making it soft. And once that glue is soft, then it will just come right off of the wood. With that done, it's time to sand the backside of these drawer faces. Now granted, there's not a lot that's going to be showing, but I still want to be able to sand the edges, and quite frankly, I'm going to sand the whole surface. Not really necessary to sand the whole surface, but it's just something that I like to do. The only part that's actually going to be seen from this side is this edge. And by the way, that seam that you see around the frame where the plywood was dropped in, that's not going to be seen on the finished drawer at all. That's all going to be covered up. The final step in the process is a little bit of hand sanding. I want to be able to round over this edge just a little bit and take that sharp edge away. Now, could I do this with the power sander? Yeah, I really could, but I like doing this step by hand. It makes it where I can feel exactly how that radius is going to be shaped over and taking away that sharp edge. Now it's time to paint, and the first thing you want to do is paint the back side, which I've actually already done. And then I put it on these little standoffs, and that way it doesn't interfere with the paint on the back side while it's drying, and it gives me the freedom to be able to paint the front side. And I can do this all in one step. Now this first coat, of course, is going to raise the grain of the wood, so this is going to be sanded, and then I'll put a second coat on, and that will take care of it. I'm not going to have to go to a third or fourth coat. The second coat now is completely dry, and yes, I sanded in between coats. But now it's time to drill the holes for the hardware and get this hardware mounted. So this tool, True Position Tools, allows me to set that directly in the center. You have these little pins that fit right in here. You can adjust this left and right to be able to get it into the center. This is 12 inches from top to bottom, so I have this set at 6 inches. So that gives me the exact center of the drawer. And as far as this is set up for a 33¼ inches. So this is actually 16 5/8 to the center. So with this done and everything is set, now I can do this drawer front, and I can move to the next drawer front without any additional measurements. And we're ready to be able to drill the holes. In this kit by True Position Tools, you also have the drill bit that you need. And in case you were just doing a single knob, you have the hole right here that marks the dead center. So this is done. We'll set this out of the way. And we'll get the other drawer front. So we'll put that down. We'll take and set this back on there. And just like that, it's perfectly aligned, and we're ready to drill the holes. So that's it. Now I can put these on. Just like that. I'm going to need to get some longer screws. We're going to put these drawer fronts onto the cabinet next. Now to be able to do this drawer front, we have to measure this one. And this is 4 3/4, so half of that is 2 3/8. So all I need to do is set this down right here. The center line is already here, so I need to move this down to 2 3/8. And that gives me the center. Just that easy to be able to establish it. So that shows how easy it is to be able to make the adjustment. And now we already have these holes positioned, so we can just drill them. There we go. Okay, what I've done here is I set up a scrap piece of wood to be able to act as a guide. And I have this on both axes. So this will actually sit right down here on that, and I don't even have to worry about holding it, because that will give me the perfect alignment. The overhang is actually 3/8 of an inch. So that gives the proper spacing. Now what I'm going to do is sit this right there, slide it over, and then we'll drill these 2 holes, and I can mount the handle. That will hold it in place while I open up the drawer and finish securing the face of the drawer front. The screws themselves are really designed when you buy the hardware package to be able to fit through a 3/4 inch drawer face, or to be able to have a 1/2 inch drawer face with that 3/4 inch. Well, I don't have that. I have a 1 inch, because the drawer face itself is a 1/2 inch thick, and the drawer itself is made out of 1/2 inch. So I actually need to shorten these screws just a little bit. And to do that, set it up in the vise, and I also put the nut on to this. It does 2 things. It helps hold it securely in the vise, and if those threads are a little bit burred on the end, this nut, when you take it off, cleans that up, and it makes for a very smooth operating screw again. So this is a little trick that I want to show you. Whenever you're having to cut the screws to a different length, put the nut on first, because that will straighten out, clean up those screw threads, and be ready to be able to install it. To mount this drawer face, keep in mind, I need that original length of the screw. I didn't cut all the screws. This is 3/4 inch thick material, and it's drilling into a 1/2 inch thick drawer itself. So the original screws will work just fine for this application. The cut screws are going to be required for the next 2 drawers. As far as the installation of these drawer faces, using these strips of wood in this manner makes it where one person can do this very easily. The wood is actually holding the drawer face completely, and it makes it so easy to be able to have, 1, the proper alignment, and 2, this drawer face doesn't slip and slide all over the place and get out of alignment. This is a method that works extremely well, and it's a method that I haven't really seen before. Usually people will start with the bottom drawer and work up from there. And once again, this is a method that I have not shown before, but I think it's worthwhile to show here to give you an alternative when you're adding the drawer face to the drawers. This method is foolproof, and it holds it perfectly aligned. And once you have the handle screwed in and tightened down, that's actually going to hold the drawer face on, and it's not going to allow for any movement. At this point, you can open up the drawer, and I can add the additional screws in here to be able to secure this drawer face to the drawer. Okay, on the inside of the drawer, I want to mark the placement for the screws. And I just have a little scrap block I'm going to put there. Put a line. Do the same thing over here. And I'm going to do one right here. One on the other side. And then to get the proper height, I have another little scrap piece of wood that I can just mark that on each of those vertical lines that I had done. And now I'm ready to add the screws. Now put a clamp on the end, and that just helps to hold the drawer so it doesn't have that lateral movement. And I can put that screw right into that point where I had marked it. And I'll do that on all 4 of the locations across the front of this drawer. Now keep in mind, this paint is very, very fresh. I don't want to take a chance on having that clamp mar the surface. That's why I have that little small block of wood there to be able to protect the paint. And now I can just easily add that screw into position and tighten it down. And then I can remove the clamp. To put the other 2 drawer faces on, I just simply repeated the process. As you can see, they look fantastic. The alignment is perfect, everything is straight and level, and this was a very easy, effective way to be able to add the drawer faces to these drawers. Now it's time to take this cabinet over and get it installed. Well, thanks a lot for watching this video today. I hope that you was able to learn something, and I hope that you'll be able to take these different ideas back into your shop and try them out. The method I use to be able to build the drawer faces themselves is a very simple, straightforward, and quite frankly, a beginner type of technique. But it produces some very professional looking results. In addition to that, being able to mount the drawer faces the way I did with those little thin strips of wood was actually perfect. It made it where it gave perfect alignment each and every time that I put the drawers on. So if you like this video and you like the different methods that I show on building the cabinet, please, by all means, give me a thumbs up, subscribe right down there below, and hey, look, add some comments in there. Tell me what you think. Do you like this method? You want to see some other methods being done as I build different cabinets? So please, go ahead and share in the comments your questions, your comments, and what methods that you like best. Now in the next video, we're going to have a little fun. I'm going to be putting on a butcher block countertop onto this cabinet. We're going to install it. That's actually very straightforward. It literally just slides into the opening, and I'm going to be able to screw it in place. The real challenge is being able to put this butcher block top on, because these old cabinets that are in this house, nothing is square and nothing was at the consistent height. So I'm going to have to custom cut this using a template. So I'm going to show you how I made the template, how I lay it out, and how I cut this butcher block wood to be able to fit perfectly into this opening. You're not going to want to miss that. So until next time, I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye, everyone.